Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 433. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, DRnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot, Segulin, and the Duke of You-Know.
How's it going, eh?
On this episode, Jim and I are actually beginning the first of two. We're going to be doing back-to-back recordings. This episode's going to be on Convergence number 8, and just the whole wrap-up of the Convergence event, how we felt about it, and ramifications of Convergence. Besides that, we're going to begin through voicemails talking about the DC television programming that's both out and is coming out. We have a voicemail where we start ranking the shows in order. But on our next episode, we are going to talk about the finales of all three programs. We were actually going to do that today as a part of this. But as we were realizing that that's going to be a very depth-filled discussion, we wanted to break it up into two recordings to get this out to you faster, because I'd really like to release this today to get you a new show. So then tomorrow we're going to come back and record that episode and get that out to you a little sooner so we can get back to you guys a little faster. So on that note, we are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network, the League of Comic Book Podcasts, and the InfiniteComics.com podcast partnership. Sponsoring us this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, this is actually my favorite time of the month, and I did order that Gotham statue. This time of the month is when they start to get ready to shift over to the new books, new deals, new on statues, toys, anything, posters that you want to pre-order from DCBService.com. The new deals are going to be coming out this week, so be checking out DCBService.com. Remember, they're a digital partner. If you are shopping at Comixology or My Digital Comics, link your accounts and do all your shopping through their portals. It doesn't cost you anything more, but what it does is it gives you 5% credit for each of those purchases towards your DCB service purchases. So you get something back for shopping you're already doing, and you're helping out our sponsor, DCBService.com. Over at InStockTrades.com, I'm geeking out because they've got like great deals on like the Batgirl trade paperback, Volume 5. It's 50% off, only $8.99. They've got Batman Adventures trade paperback, which I've loved these books, the Batman Adventures books, 50% off, only $9.99. This is a Marvel one, but I am a huge fan of when Claremont first took over the X-Men. They've got the Giant Size X-Men 40th Anniversary hardcover. I totally missed that this came out. It is a collection. It's 50% off. Giant Size X-Men number 1 and 3 and 4. Classic X-Men number 1, X-Men Origins Colossus number 1, X-Men Origins Wolverine number 1, X-Men Deadly Genesis number 1 through 6, What If from 1989 number 9 and 23, and material from X-Men Gold number 1. This is a 440-page volume that's $19.99, and I love these kind of Giant Size X-Men, had such a huge impact on my comic fandom. I was just a big fan of the whole family aspect of the team and the writing, and it was one of those books that was one of the early ones that got me to know a writer and kind of changed the way that I read comics now. So I'm excited for that one. And those 50% off deals, they do make a difference to me as far as, am I going to get that or am I not? In this case, I'm like, I can get that at 50% off. All right, I'm in. And that's InStockTrades.com. Mr. Segulin, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on today's show. So, if you ever read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Let's talk some comics.
Nice work, Atom. What are these characters up to?
Jim, I want to shout out real quick the DC Radio Podcast. One of our listeners posted on Facebook. They did a shout out for us. And it's interesting. I've always had a policy with, the fact that we do a DC podcast, that I listen to other podcasts that are DC related after we've done the content. Only because I don't want to make our show a regurgitation of what they already talked about. Because I recognize that a lot of our listeners that are DC fans listen to us and other podcasts. And I have a tendency to be highly influenced conversation-wise by other things that I've heard. So I don't want to have the same show that they did. Even though we put in our own thoughts, I don't want to do that. And I do that with every podcast. This is I don't know if you've heard of it. DC Radio is a recap show. It's a weekly recap show. And what they do is they recap the comics that have been released for the week. But the nice thing about it, they do it in a fun and unique way. They kind of put their own acting spin on it, if it makes sense. So each one takes they break up the books between the various people that are on the podcast, and each one does their kind of recap of what's been going on. But then the other people present will do commentary on the recap and the events that are happening. So it's good if you want to stay, caught up on what's going on in DC. They do a really interesting, unique show. What I loved about it was it's just another really cool DC podcast that's out there that has its own unique voice. I really am amazed by the fact that we all are able to go out there and podcast, and because I think people who really have a passion for coming into podcasting and just want to be themselves, that in and of itself brings a lot of validity to podcasting, because you're not trying to be somebody else's show, you're not trying to do something else. So it was really fun, but in the middle of the podcast, they do this kind of break between segment 1 and segment 2, where they do a battle on Earth 33, which is the Earth that we would live on. And we were, it was them versus comic book writers, and we were involved.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was really cool how they did this. I was laughing all the way through the show, but really enjoying the commentary on the recap. So I just wanted to shout them out, and I want to thank them for shouting us out. I just thought it was really cool. It's one of the things I've loved about podcasting since day one. We've been around for almost 10 years now. Genuinely, the podcasting community is so supportive of each other. It's just a wonderful community. I don't feel we're competitive with each other. I feel like we're all just here to have fun. Every time a new podcast comes in, I don't consider it competition. I consider it just another option for people. Our podcast isn't for everybody, and people that maybe aren't finding what they need from our show can listen to DC Radio. People who aren't finding what they need from DC Radio can listen to our show, and then there's an audience that we share that is finding something that they like between both of us. I've typically found that if in this type of market, when you're doing podcasting, people that aren't your audience, by recommending them to another podcast, you're going to lose them anyway because they weren't your audience, if that makes sense. But other people shouting you out point people your way that maybe were looking for your show all along, or were looking to add on to their podcasting listening. So I really appreciate it when other podcasts shout us out. That's why I always try to be very open to it on our podcast. I really enjoyed their show, so I highly recommend it as one you should listen to. It's a unique voice, and their recaps were a lot of fun, because it wasn't just like a straight regurgitation. They were having fun with it, and they were doing their commentary on which characters they like and dislike, and they did this bit on Geoforce. And I apologize for forgetting the name right now. One of the hosts does not like Geoforce at all, and was doing this kind of spoof on the whole Batman of the Outsiders was Geoforce and his amazing friends. Basically, was the gist of the whole thing.
Nice.
And he was really having fun with and Geoforce comes in to save the day. But then when they got to the Hawkman issue, it was cool because I'm a gigantic Hawkman fan. It sounded like the whole crew was kind of in the place you're in with Hawkman, especially that era, the Shadow War era of Hawkman, where it's kind of I just don't get it. But by the end of the second issue, they were finding a lot of value in the character. They're I think I'm becoming a Hawkman fan. Because that Hawkman Convergence title really did have some great story going on there. And it was an interesting Hawkman primer, I think, for people who are trying to figure out what's the deal with the Hawks. That was a 2-issue miniseries. I wouldn't hesitate to recommend to people and say, hey, if you want to get a gist for them, you're either going to love them or hate them after reading this, but this is really who they are and what they're all about. That Convergence book really did a nice job with them, I thought. So I just wanted to shout them out because I had a lot of fun listening to the episode. I was driving home yesterday from work, and I tend to rotate a lot through different podcasts to try and listen to as much as I can. And I meant to click it on for about 10 minutes because I was running a few errands. So I threw it on, and then I was going to listen to the rest later. I wound up liking it so much that I came home, listened immediately, went through and listened to the whole episode, and just really had a good time with it. So I just wanted to shout the guys out and thank them for entertaining me. I thought it was a great episode. The episode I listened to is the Convergence Week 7 episode, and they've just done a series of post-Convergence episodes, talking about what's coming up post-Convergence. So I'm going to be checking those out next, but DC Radio it's a weekly recap show. Check them out. Speaking of Convergence, the event is over, and we're on issue number 8. Jim, do you want to give us a quick shout-out to the creative team on Convergence number 8?
Oh, definitely. But before I do, let me just open up with an apology on the name butchering. I am going to try to say the pencilers' last names, but I know I'm going to butcher them. And I just wanted to apologize ahead of time because I absolutely love the look of this book. I think the full creative team needs to get their full just dues on them. But again, I'm going to butcher some names here. But we are talking Convergence number 8, Last Stand. The writers are Jeff King with Scott Lobdell. Pencils by Steven Segovia, Segovia, Carlo Pagualana, Pagualayan, Eduardo Pancia, Pansica, and Ethan Van Sciver. Inks are by Jason Paz with Scott Hanna, Trevor Scott, Steven Segovia with Ethan Van Sciver. Colorists, Peter Steigerwald, Steigerwald, with Travis Lanham on letterers. Andy Kubert, Brad Anderson on covers, Tony Daniel, Tamu More on the variant covers, with Jill Thompson, John Romita Jr. on additional variant covers. We had a couple variant covers, which looked really cool, by the way. With special thanks to Jeff Johns, Beth Soto, Mark Rawson, assistant editor Brittany Holzherr, and editor Marby Javis. Of course, Superman was created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster by special arrangements with the Jerry Siegel family.
I just want to tell everybody, that's our show for this week. We'll we'll be back next week to talk about the issue.
We're on creative team, man. This was, and I tell you, the neat thing about this, before we get in any comments, is I love how I really do love how this series flowed together. And I like the fact that we have so many different creative people involved with this, but there was never any point in time when it was jarring to me, especially on the art side. This thing flowed from beginning to end. To me, it looked like it could have very easily been one person doing all the work. And the fact that it flowed through so beautifully for me, and that I wasn't like, wow, look at that glaring, massive thing that's just, sticking out. No, everything flowed beautifully with all these creative teams. That's why, as I said, I wanted to give apologies before butchering some names, but I just had to say everybody and just say how outstanding of a job this was.
This series in general, when I'm thinking about the experience of Convergence, I think Convergence is a great example of, for me, it was a mini series where you can't really judge it until it's done. For me, I really enjoyed the series all along, but it was kind of one of those feeling out processes because it felt very different to me than any other DC event. Like, you kind of didn't know what the end game was going to be from the beginning. I liked that. I found it refreshing. At the end, with issue 8, I really find this to be one of those miniseries that stands out for me now. But it really wasn't until the final issue, when you get okay, this is what the point was. This is what they were doing with this. That it's universe changing. This really opened up some things. I'm glad they did this because, let's just jump to it. We read, and I want to shout out Daniel from our Facebook group. He posted a comicbook.com article, interview with the writer that I really enjoyed, because it kind of gave you an overhead on, okay, the end game of this was really to open up not just the multiverse again and clarify that, and spin off of Morrison's Multiversity, but also open up the concept that, once again, and I've always loved this about DC, I've never understood the limiting the multiverse to just a certain number of worlds. As a concept, it should be an infinite number of worlds, and even an infinite number of multiverses. There might be more than one multiverse on that, because the idea is unique storytelling options. Why would we pigeonhole ourselves where we can't use certain characters? This miniseries did exactly what I was hoping it would do. I didn't think it was going to go here, but it opened up everything again. It's all available on some level. I want to know the Crisis characters. Let's talk about the characters from the first Crisis who were running back in. There's a difference this time because Superman and Lois Lane and the baby went back with them. Also, Parallax went back with them. So Flash and Supergirl, who were supposed to die in that, now we're going back to a first Crisis where these characters are going back with them. I want to read that story.
Yeah.
Like this is an Elseworld story now. What they've done is set up an Elseworld story that I want to read. I really want to read that and see what happens because those characters are there. How does that change the events? So they've got me curious and interested in where things are going to go. I want to read from the spin-off titles. I want to read what happens to Infinity Inc. Infinity Inc. now is JSA Infinity or, the new JSA. I want to see what happens with them. So there's things that happen in the spin-off titles that I want to see where these characters go from here. I thought this was all going to be closure. I want to see what happened to Nightwing and Oracle after they got married. Because here's what we know now at the end of issue 8. All of these books that we thought were bookending these characters aren't. They're still alive. They're out there. This opened that up in a capacity that has got me intrigued for future storytelling experiences with these characters. And I love that. That to me now took all the tie-ins, and in issue 8, every single tie-in that was a part of this has a different value than the isolated stories that they looked like as I was reading them from the get-go. So it's very interesting to think of these books differently now. And I don't know if you're having that experience, but for me, that was kind of at the end of this, especially when I reread issue 8 again. I'm like, oh my gosh, here's the curveball of all this. These stories not only all happened, but they weren't it. There's an opportunity to tell more with these characters at some point in miniseries, in crossovers, in characters from our world going to their worlds and things like that. It opens all that fun stuff up again, that's a uniquely fun thing with DC. Growing up, I loved the fact that somebody can burst through a wall and they wind up on another world. Sometimes they're unique and interesting versions of our characters that we've never seen before. Other times it's revisiting previous iterations of characters that because of reboots, we haven't seen again. We haven't seen since. Particularly the Golden Age characters. That was the ones growing up that I saw. But now it's a much larger landscape. And those characters are still out there. We can still tell stories from them. They're still existing, and all those stories matter. For us that are continuity junkies, all we want to know is our reading, our characters. Did they matter? How do they relate to this current world? How does that history fit together? Sometimes you can tell a story that just kind of in a very clever way loops around and kind of says, hey, guess what? It all happened. It's all there. And this is why. And it's a tight little bow. And sometimes, it's important to keep that loose enough to say, why it all happened? Because there's many, many multiverses out there. And you know what? It's like the Hawkman conundrum. Years ago, Jeff Johns in JSA took the Hawkman stuff and tied it up into a nice fun bow with reincarnation. And, it made it all work. This did the same thing with all these different versions of characters who lived, who died, that type of thing. And nice little bow. All this stuff happened. And guess what? New things happened because of what happened with Telos, particularly the Crisis. Am I the only one? Do you want to see that story?
What?
The Crisis Now?
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, yeah. Well, here's an interesting thing with me. When the first time I read through this, I was a little bit angry.
Really?
And the reason I was angry was I was like, because it didn't completely click in my head what I had just read. Because I'm like going, oh yeah, it was a cool story. And I first read through it as like, okay, this is just the origin for Earth 2 and the moving on to the story of them. Like, but we had all these great stories here. And I'm like, and the stuff you're talking about with the Crisis, I'm like, Crisis Now is a new ending. Dang it, I want to know what happened. And I wasn't thinking, oh yeah, they can tell that story. And I wasn't thinking that there was a reboot for the multiverse. And then when I did my second read through, that's when I kind of started, it dawned on me like, hey, Jimmy, you're an idiot. Hello. And that's when it kind of clicked in my head that this, what this actually was and how the multiverse is back, how Elseworld stories now aren't just Elseworld stories. They are the past, the returning back to these characters that we thought were long gone. Well, now they continue. Now they go on. So it dawned on once it dawned on me what actually happened, I was like, oh, this is awesome. And that's when I got the goofy, giggly, and just, happy moments. And then I read the interview you mentioned, and that really escalated it because it sounds like they've got some stuff in the works already, and we're going to get some more stuff. So I'm assuming we're going to see that Infinite Crisis, the new ending or the continuation or however you want to word that, we're going to see that story soon. So I'm looking forward to that.
I don't care when. And here's the funny thing. There's a lot of things now I'm interested in because of the fact that this event happened and that they're open as options. Many of the Convergence tie-ins, I'm interested in seeing a continuation of them. I know I'm not going to see all of them. I'm just hoping that I get to see some of them because I really enjoyed so many of them. I guess I was looking at them all, especially before this issue came out, as these are neat little closure pieces with these characters. It's kind of a nostalgic nod and wink to fans and saying, hey, if you read this era, this is for you. And each week was labeled that way, and fit that way. If you were a fan of this era, this is your week, and we're going to, give you a love letter. And if you were a fan of this era, this is your week, and we're going to give you a love letter. After reading this issue, I got excited because I'm like, you know what? All that's available now. So it's not done. Those weren't epilogues. And I like that. And I think that's interesting. They may never tell another story with any of those characters. I might be wrong on that. But I like the idea of possibilities. I never understood this need with DC continuity because they've done it from time to time where it's like, let's close all this off. Let's not leave that there. I've enjoyed the stories where they've done that, but I've always felt like I've missed the idea of being able to travel to wonderful, fantastic worlds, to be able to have the New 52 Superman encounter the pre-crisis Superman. And, I don't want that all the time. I want tight stories set in current continuity. I'm a fan of that. But every so often, there's a reason to tell, this story where you bring these characters in. It can be a very small story done in a singular book where a Flash meets up with Jay Garrick, or it can be a larger story where it's a bunch of characters because there's an overwhelming universe concept and they need to team up with these other heroes in order for that to happen, in order for that to succeed because they're just not enough. And I love that stuff. I just think it's really great to have that in the toolbox and to have that there. I liked the whole resolution with Earth 2 in this. And the fact that basically they were being left for dead. Brainiac didn't care. Brainiac's like, it's enough that I remember them. They existed. They're cataloged. Because that's Brainiac's MO, right? They've been cataloged and they've been remembered by Brainiac. So the other two characters were going to be left for dead. Telos was like, basically like, what's going to happen to them? And they were going to be wiped out. Thankfully, Green Lantern stepped in. And I liked that the Earth 2 characters saved themselves. Green Lantern stepped in and he protected everybody. Everybody stay close. Let me protect you. It's, again, this team kind of banding together because they've been my writing buddies in this, and I've really grown. I've loved them since issue 1 of Earth 2. We got to see them through the weekly book all the way into this event. They were banding together, and they survived this whole concept together. And then in the end, Telos moved their world as kind of a closing gesture, moved that world back to their universe to give them another Earth. An Earth that they could create from the ground up. And that's what Green Lantern did. He tied into the green of this new world now that Telos is gone. It's no longer that corrupted kind of world. It's, it's lush and green again and a planet for them to colonize. And it sets up the next series. I really like that. I like that they have a new world and this is the way it is. And it's a new Earth in their universe. I don't want them in ours. I want them... I've always liked the Earth 2 book because it isn't beholden to what's going on in the New 52, per se. It's its own unique world that can have a history and can further develop. So now everything that we've read previously with Earth 2 is leading into this new book with this new world that they're going to colonize and move forward with their continuity. If they encounter our people, it's not in our world, it's in theirs. If that makes sense. I don't want them in our world. I want them their own unique world with their own issues to deal with, their own villains, their own stories, their own little variations of our characters. I'm anxious to see where it goes. The Earth 2 Society preview only got me more excited for that because there's going to be a whole lot of intrigue. This is not going to be easy because heroes are going to have trouble with other heroes because of different philosophies. When you're colonizing a world, you're going to have different ideas about what that should and should not look like. I'm very excited for where that's going to go. This event, it's funny, it was an event that I thought wow, it's going to be a nice little contained event, maybe to have hopefully a couple characters come back. We're going to see Earth 2 thrown back into the mix. It really had a much larger impact on the overall understanding of how the multiverse works in DC for me. And the fact that now all of a sudden everything's back in play. And it validates what you and I have always said since Flashpoint happened. Everything before happened. It is all connected. It's still there. It's not just new and now we've closed off a chapter. All of these stories matter and play in some level into the larger DC tapestry. For me as a fan, I've grown up my whole life reading DC comics. I've, read Marvel. I've read all of that. But I like to know that every story I've read has value. They did that. And I thought it was just a nice, clean way to do it that just mattered to me. Well, for you, one of the things that I've heard a lot as criticism of the Convergence event was if you didn't have a connection with some of the characters in the tie-ins, this event didn't have the same impact. At the end of this, what was this experience like for you as a journey? Because I would imagine your journey was a lot different than mine. You shared some of that. You were angry with this issue when it was first done because your take on it was a little different. Where are you at now on it, and how do you see all this relating to your reading?
Well, and it's kind of interesting because, as I said, I was angry, and then once I realized what had happened, I was happy with it. And actually, even that helped my dealings with some of the crossover titles that I had no experience with, or I had no personal connection. I was reading those stuff through. I was going through, that's a neat story. But I was in that mindset that you were in, that this is just a nice little love letter that people who are fans of these characters give them something. But once I realized the big picture, I was actually able to go back and I did some rereads of some of the titles that I didn't completely connect to, but in rereading I was like, okay, this is kind of, it read differently, knowing that now this is an active universe somewhere out there. This is an active possible multiverse. This is a possible Elseworld story. This is a possible whatever story you want to call it. So because it once again was now pulled back into the quote unquote continuity, it read differently. And some of the stuff that I didn't enjoy, I don't want to say I didn't enjoy, because the stories were good. And if a story's good, I don't like saying I didn't enjoy it. I just didn't have that same personal connection to it. Well, now some of those stories that I didn't have that personal connection to, I actually kind of like, hey, this is kind of neat. This is kind of interesting. And it's funny that you mentioned the Hawks, because, my up and down love affair with going on with the Hawks, especially from the Shadow War Hawk era that we got in the Convergence titles. I tell you, by the end of issue 2, I was like, man, these guys are awesome. I was hoorahing right along with Hawkman and, right along with them, just because it's that we're going to die. We choose how we die. We die fighting. And I that was something I was like, man, that is awesome. Looking at the fact that they know they're going to die. They know everything, how that their world is going to be destroyed. But guess what? We're going down swinging. And I loved just that mindset that they had going into it. And then it was just that whole hero moment stepping up, and the fact that it was Hawkwoman who actually saved the day as opposed to Hawkman. They're bound. She's the one who's able to get out and get free. And it was a really cool tag team between the two of them fighting. Then in come the other Thanagarians. And I was just like, and I found myself going, yeah, and I'm laughing, going, man, I'm really digging this. Sean's going to be just bouncing off the walls when he reads this, because I was digging it, and I'm not a strong Hawk fan. That's the kind of stuff that this gave me after my second read through, after I realized what actually happened. I started getting a connection to stories I didn't have that connection with before, because, quote unquote, it matters now. And that was something I was really glad with, because, as I said, when I first read this, I saw this as just, this is just how explaining Earth 2. I didn't really see the big picture. Yeah. But once you see that, you're like, oh, that is awesome. That is cool. And this is one that definitely I'm going to get collected versions of this Convergence storyline. I'm going to, this is a rereadability for me right there. Just in the end, whenever they do one of these Elseworld or other multiverse stories, I'm actually going to probably go back to Convergence and reread some of that stuff. And then that, because I'm assuming it's going to stem out of that. So let me reread that, go into there and give a fresh take on it. So I'm definitely very happy with this story. And again, the ending really picked it up. I was enjoying it throughout the process, but that ending, bam, that really did kick it up to 11.
Yeah, the last few issues really started to, it's funny, it's been a story that they had a build to it, and it was a slow build. So you didn't have issue 2 knocked my socks off. It wasn't that kind of story. It was a gradual build to this. So it really was, you were waiting for the space shuttle to launch, but when it did, you were blown away. And that, in the end, that's really important. I mean, at least I was. That was my experience. But it was a different journey where it wasn't like, oh my God, issue 1 out of the starting gate, issue 2, wow. You said it best. I enjoyed it along the way. It wasn't really until the last couple issues that it really started going, wow. But I don't think those issues would have had that impact for me if it wasn't for the gradual build. This was a very unique build for a miniseries, which is hard to do, I think, nowadays, because I think we have this expectation of every issue has to have big explosions and, Michael Bay and, that kind of thing. And I mean, I like all that stuff too, and I'm with everybody that's in that place. But I think with a miniseries, there's an opportunity to do something you can't do in a monthly. And I really felt this was one that's a great example of you can't always judge a mini until it's complete. And this one, in the end, you're right. There's a lot of value to it. There is a readability to it now. Whereas if you'd asked me halfway through, I would have said, you know what? I really enjoyed this experience. I probably will reread it at some point. I don't see myself doing it soon just because I think, I just enjoyed the story. By issue 8, I'm with you. I'm like, this is going to be one of those that it now goes down to me as one of the better DC events. It's in that grouping because of the fact that I feel like it had impact. The only way for that to really show, though, is what do they do with it from here? And it's going to be over the next year or 2 or 3. What they do with the pieces that this creative team has left on the table is really what's of value to me. That ultimately, in the end, will be what did Convergence have an impact? We won't know until we see. What do they do with this? That's the part where you kind of go, not only was Convergence a fun story, but look at what it led to. If at the end you kind of go, they did that, but none of them happened, it's different. But I think that if writers are able to take advantage of the storytelling opportunity, heck, if I get that Crisis story as a miniseries or something, whatever that looks like, or as a tie-in to, maybe Flash goes to their world and he sees that new crisis happen or something. I don't know. That type of stuff, I think, would be make it more worthwhile to me as time goes on. I want to see what they do with this now that they've opened up these tools. Morrison did it with the Multiversity series. This expanded on it, and I think really built off of the Multiversity series. Did you finish Multiversity?
I haven't finished it yet.
I can't recommend enough. You've got to finish the whole thing because it doesn't make any sense if you don't.
Tell me about it.
But no, seriously, when you finish it, it's kind of like, oh. Yeah. And I almost don't want to spoil it because of the fact that you really had the last issue, you kind of go, oh, wait a minute, now I get it all. It was one of those where Morrison tied it up nicely. And I do recommend it in relation to this because Multiversity leads into this. This references Multiversity in it and kind of, I think, does a great job of bridging how Multiversity ties into this larger tapestry of it. I think this takes Multiversity and kicks the ideas that Morrison was throwing out to a whole new level. Morrison was talking about, kind of pinning down the various worlds in the New 52 with his guidebook and all that. I love the fact that this goes, well, yeah, but then there's multiverse upon multiverse, which was concepts Morrison was starting to play with. It gets really kind of fun and cerebral on the end to go that every turn, like, let's go to that first Crisis. My viewpoint of how this explains it all, first Crisis happened the way that we read it. But now because of this, these heroes have gone back and set a divergent timeline out there, where now there is another world where Crisis happened, but Flash and Supergirl went back with Parallax and our Superman that was married to Lois and their baby, Jonathan Kent, and they're involved in Crisis. How did that change things? Can't wait to see.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and it's weird because it's just, when you start looking at, well, we have this, and you start looking at the like there was that one page where it was like a beautiful 2-page spread that showed all the universes going back in a line, and you have the shadow images of what was before, and then the more colored upfront images of what's currently going on in that universe. So all these different universes had little tweaks to them. All these different universes had had little changes, and I liked seeing the fact that we're getting that, and we're seeing here's the change now. So every one of those big balloons and whatnot, you could get another story. You could get something out of that. And, all of those it's funny because all of those I want to see. I want to see the Crisis. I want to see that. I want to see what happens to Telos, because his story isn't done yet. Mm-hmm. He knows who he is. He's searching for who he is, but he still has power. Even though all this stuff changed, he moved a planet, from the wherever part of the multiverse it was back to Earth too. So he moved a planet. So he still has some serious power levels. I want to see how he plays out. I want to see where he goes in. There's so many different stuff that is spun out of Convergence of these possible stories that creators can use. I'm very excited for that, for the unknown future. I'm very excited for the what if we could do with this.
I loved the interview that I'm referencing that Daniel pointed us to, which is really great. And please, it's in our Facebook group. I'll actually put a link to the interview in our show notes so everyone can read it. There was a question about that last 2 issues we talked about, 6 and 7. We were talking about how, what was going on with Guy Gardner and Supergirl symbol and stuff like that. Some of that was intentional.
Yeah.
The idea, some of it was the fact that the Red Lanterns were alive when the issue was originally drawn, and then they weren't. But I loved his explanation was, with everything that was going on temporally in this, we started to see subtle variations of characters in that issue, and some of that was deliberate. Especially with Superman, Supergirl, Martian Manhunter, but then also Guy Gardner being in his uniform and those type of things, started to show that the temporal effect was having. You know what? That was the only answer I needed. Just somebody give me an explanation as far as why that happened. I actually really because I loved the art in those issues, and I just needed something to wrap my head around. And it makes sense with everything that was going on temporally. Some of it may have been, and it seems to be an implication that some of it may have been a little bit of a mistake because of the fact that here's the way the universe was when we started doing these issues. Then, but I'm cool with that. I was actually cool with the honesty of the answer, but then also saying, but realistically in the storyline, because of the temporal issues going on here, here's why that happened. That's all I needed. Tie it up in a nice little bow for me. I'm cool with that. Yes, it's a temporal issue, and I love timey stuff, so do that. That's cool. Explain it to me that way.
And I believe one of us actually said that could be a possible solution as to what was going on. Mm-hmm. So it's, again, it was funny because it was something that was easily fixable, easily commented on. I'm glad they brought it up, and I'm glad it mentioned. I have absolutely zero. Well, when we read it, I didn't have a major issue with it. I noticed it later, and I didn't even notice the Supergirl shield until I think when we were doing the discussion. I think is when I first started really noticing that, and started noticing the big stuff with the big changes, etc. Right there, good explanation. Done. Move on. I was glad they mentioned it. I'm glad it was referenced, and I'm happy with that. And again, you kind of get this type of stuff going on, and it fits. And it's weird because it's that interview I read after everything, and I read after I was already in a comfort place with it. But that interview really did kick it up for me a lot, and I was really happy to see how much more we're going to get out of this. And I got a very positive. You get a very positive energy and a very positive vibe from that. So I was very happy when that happened. A lot of times after the fact or stuff like that, people will look and say, you get a lot of criticism, you get a lot of negative, and you don't get like this, you don't get the warm fuzzies a lot of times. And I was very happy to see that, after this is the beginning of something. This isn't the end of something. And I really got that vibe from there. So I'm very happy. Thank you for who posted it, because I had no idea about it at all. So yeah,
it was Daniel.
Outstanding.
That was Daniel, and thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things I really liked about this issue was the starting off with the red stormy background, which is very reminiscent of DC's past crisis type of style events. That is the vibe when anything temporal is going on and there's shattering. Then you'd flip to the page where you see like everybody and their uncle. I am always blown away when not only do you show the entire cast of DC, but you show just various variations from history of DC's characters together in a jam piece. That's hard to do. The reference material that artists have to pull off of in order to do that. This has been a beautiful book all along. And you referenced earlier, you wanted to show respect to the various art teams that have dealt with this book. And kudos to that, because I do think this has been very unique, very beautiful reading all the way through. And I would apply that also to the tie-ins. I've really enjoyed revisiting characters and stories. I think it's a lot more interesting now to take a look at the tie-ins, because of the fact that issue 8 I added some more value to them in my eyes. They became something more than what they originally were. And I liked them originally, but I think there's a lot more value to them now. But these jam pieces, I love certain drawings of Dr. Fate. I'm a Dr. Fate fan. He's one of the Earth 2 characters that growing up I was always intrigued by, just because he looks unique. We didn't have on the Earth 1 when I was growing up, we didn't have a Dr. Fate. Dr. Fate was an Earth 2 character. So when you'd see him, he's kind of an enigma. But I love when he has like this kind of mystic, shadowy presence. You know, it's he almost seems unworldly. You know, he's like kind of distant from everybody because of the fact that he is this kind of magic creature, without a lack of a better term with him. I like that he's the centerpiece in this, with the cape flowing over him and he's analyzing what's going on around them, because you need the magic guy to explain, hey, this is what's going on with time and all that. The role that he had, I loved the nod, because this is the Golden Age Dr. Fate. This is the first one. This is the guy. And I'm very excited for that book, Dr. Fate, a new Dr. Fate coming in. I've always enjoyed the concept, and that's one of the books I'm excited about coming in there. But I geek out over the Golden Age guys. I do. I like them. I love the history. I love that when they're drawn the right way, they can seem like they belong. There's something classic to them, something, you know, you always do the dun-dun-dun with Superman. Those are my dun-dun-dun characters because they're from a gentler time. Yet when you put them into something like this that is so end of the world, you see them step up in a way that is truly heroic, and they don't compromise themselves. That JSA, that two-parter, I was one of my favorite of the tie-ins of all of them, because it was such a nod back to a gentler time. Yet these guys had to decide, how are we going to handle these events? When they got their powers back, and they were so excited to have them back, and there were moments in this deep battle where it's like, hey, if we don't win this, everybody dies. They're like, I'm having fun. Yeah. And I so love that, because that takes me back to my childhood, because why did we grow up as kids wanting to be superheroes and do all that kind of stuff? Because it looked fun. And every so often it's okay to just have fun. And some of these issues, these tie-ins, some of them were just plain out fun. The Captain Carrot appearances, and I'm not just talking about Captain Carrot himself, but the Zoo Crew. We had the Speedster appearing in Speed Force. That stuff was fun to me. Other ones were darker and more serious, and I was cool with that too. I liked that some of these weren't afraid to have a good time, and yet they didn't feel out of place. That's hard to do in this type of event, and this event had a really nice balance of very different kinds of sentimental, kind of tear-jerking emotions, to hoorah, kick-butt fights, to fun. Just issues that were just fun. Ambush Bug is another one. If I want to talk about something, the Matrix two-parter that turned into being an ambush bug, really mini. I liked it because I thought it was going to be one thing, and it wound up being a new Ambush Bug mini. Yeah. And honestly, I want more Ambush Bug out of that. I thought that was a great handling of Ambush Bug.
You know what? And I've never been a big Bug fan. Mm-hmm. You know, and I was laughing throughout that. And I think with me and Ambush Bug, I can take little small bits like that, and it's him interacting with heroes, him doing stuff like that. For me, is what makes him, you know. That's where my enjoyment is with Ambush Bug. So I think for me, that was a great usage of him. Mm-hmm. Again, it's him just playing the two pieces out when he was playing, you know, this Matrix and playing Lex and just playing everyone around, just doing his thing. And it's Ambush Bug, so he kind of knows about us, the readers, and those are kind of things that it's a weird read for me. You got to have the right person create him. You got to have the right person writing him and playing out the action and playing out the story and playing out the comedy. This mini was a great one, and I really enjoyed it. That was something I was laughing about as I was reading it. And again, my reread through, I was like, "Oh, this is kind of funny." There's some good stuff. It's one of those things where it made me think, "Okay, this is why Ambush Bug is so popular. This is why so many people like him. They see that, you know, when they read it." So it's funny just. Throughout all the stuff, there was a lot of moments. You know, you talked about just the old Justice Society, the Earth 2 heroes. I was hoorahing right along with you, and I'm thinking, hey, okay, now which one of these? And it's one of those things I kept doing throughout this. Okay, which universe is this? Do I have the trades already? Do I need to get the trade? You know, and I'm trying to figure out which, you know, stories, which eras. And I'm like looking at my trades, going, okay, do I have these guys? Because I've got a massive stack of trades and omnibuses and whatnot that I haven't started reading, and I'm trying to find out which one are these so I can make sure I can start reading those, because this was a series that really, once again, it got me wanting to read the original Justice Society, the original stuff. Go back to that.
Yeah, that kind of stuff was important to me about this, that there were characters that I wanted to read again. I wanted to go back and read some of their older material because of it. Like, it took me back to an era, and I'm with you on that there was a lot of that going on. That's what I mean why I think it's important for a comic company to make relevant not just your current material, but nowadays with digital and with trades and with hardcovers, our accessibility to older material, it used to be before you had to go just back issue bin diving. And I love that. That's still a process that I love and enjoy. That's the great thing about going to a show for those that are like trying to complete their collections and be able to read them. But for those that also just want stories, and there's a whole new market now of hardcover and trade collectors and digital collectors now that want to have that stuff available in your digital medium. This type of stuff makes you go, oh, I want to seek back some issues. They were doing Convergence sales on Comixology, running along every single week, and there's a current one this week that they've been running of just specials on 99 cents for like full, banks of issues on various characters that are involved in Convergence. And I've really liked that. There's been certain ones that I've grabbed that I'm like, I've got these as paper issues, but I'm just going to grab a bunch of these just to read them again because I haven't in a long time. And it's just nice to have them at my fingertips. That comes from the fact that these stories matter. They aren't closed off. And I think this clarified now and kind of showed the change in thinking at DC. Like, it's great to make your characters accessible and start them over again like they did with the New 52. But we don't have to throw away our toy box to do that. And that's what this story did. This story just showed a shift, I think, in that thinking. That, not every book has to be 100% tied into all this. We can tell some really cool stories. I think that's what I'm excited about with what's coming next with books like Prez and stuff like that. I don't imagine that Prez is going to be the actual president of the DC universe. I think Prez is going to be its own little unique contained thing. And I'm excited for that. I'm excited for some books that are just put out for the purpose of being that. And maybe Prez will be the president of DC universe. I don't know. We'll see. I'm excited for seeing where all this stuff kind of goes, though, because of it. Brainiac, can we talk a little bit about him? Because the explanation of Brainiac and what this Brainiac was going through, and I want to clarify it's this Brainiac because I don't think this is representative of what Brainiac, well, it's clearly not going to be representative of what Brainiac's like after this. This Brainiac's become kind of an enigma because he's absorbed too much. Like, there is such a thing as too much knowledge. Now you've evolved into something that isn't what you were before. And that's what this Brainiac is. He was so loaded up with everything, including every crisis event and every temporal piece of nonsense that's happened in the DC universe over the years, that he's ready to explode with that, universe shattering to the point where this will be a rift that would destroy everything and everyone, including our world, which was outside of this, the current New 52, and everything within. I really liked this idea that, by releasing all this, by putting all these worlds back, by setting certain events right. Like, I like that they went off into the crisis, and because they went there, that means that happened. That had a temporal effect almost immediately. He was now able to send everyone back home. I really enjoyed that kind of explanation. I liked that it moved very quickly. Like, no, we sent them back, so now it happened. Because it happened, we set something into motion. I'm able to do this now. Those type of things I think were great. I was glad that some of that happened very quick. Just this sense of once you made the decision, once you put it in play, there's an immediate effect to that because it happened.
Yeah, and it was, again, it's part of the whole with when you start dealing with the rules of time and dealing with the rules of time travel, once you change the one, it's that flood of immediate reaction. Especially because what happened all that time ago, leads to this. So we change that, everything falls in place, and I like that. And I did like their explanation of who this Brainiac is and how we still have that universe. Still the main universe still has Brainiac, still has its own variation of it. We can have that character interact with Superman and the other heroes and whatnot. And this entity, he's still out there as well. So there's going to be, again, this is another one of those stories where this creature still exists out there. There's still another Brainiac. There's still this creature. I like the fact that he did separate himself, and just how when they showed those, there was a couple pages where they're just breaking down the whole different stories and breaking out how he came to be and how he is different. And it was, again, I was happy to see that. I was like, okay, more explanation, more story of what's going on, but also, because this is, again, setting up future stuff. we know, well, we don't know, but I'm assuming we're going to see this guy again. Just like I'm assuming we're going to see Telos again. Just like I'm assuming we're going to get some other stories out of this. So I love the fact that they're taking time within the story. They're explaining the story, wrapping it up, but they're setting up for the future stories as well. And for me, that's always a sign of a great story that, yes, we're getting an ending, but we're laying the groundwork for future stuff as well.
Yeah, I think that's always great when you have these large characters, and we're seeing characters from Crisis Past appearing right now in Justice League in the title proper. These are characters that are going to appear and be used in ways that we're not imagining them appearing and used again in the future. It's just setting up a larger cosmic scale thing. You need characters like this. You need your ground level, street level, just simple villains. You also need your big universe spanning villains, because those are the reasons why you bring all of these people together and actually make it seem like a genuine threat. If you don't have these kind of characters, that's not going to happen. It's having all these guys against Ambush Bug isn't going to work. You got to have like a Brainiac, a big guy like that. You got to keep evolving Brainiac, though. It's amazing how much scarier Brainiac has become over time because of the fact that they've evolved him and made him into like a real creep factor. I think Jeff Johns did a really great job in that Superman Brainiac. It's a hardcover Superman Brainiac that collects those issues of that reimagining of just what Brainiac is. I really liked that because it took something that the Bottled City thing was always kind of like, hey, Kandor's cool. Everybody's tiny, but they're Superman-like, and it's fun because it's Kandor. And he turned that into a really scary concept, which then led into something like this, where not only is it that scary concept, but look, he took whole worlds and plucked them out. We don't even know if their worlds still exist. In the end of this, I loved that we found out they did. And these can be put back on their particular worlds. And those worlds can still exist, and they have evolved. I like the evolution of them in this. When you got to see an evolution of what each world looks like now, because of this event, what it did to the time stream, it explained that the JSA is our Earth 2 characters now. It's that, but because of the fact that multiverse happened, we could still pull from those older characters if necessary.
Right.
So those things all happened. They've just been a shift. I like that they evolved some of the Elseworlds, like the Pirate Batman world. I don't know if you read any of that.
Yeah.
But I like that they evolved that and modernized it a little. And they took the world where Batman was a Green Lantern, and they evolved and modernized that a little bit. And added, in the cases that I'm mentioning, the Western world, they modernized that. In the cases that I'm mentioning, it got me excited for somebody to tell some stories in those worlds. The shifted version, the new version of it again. Freedom Fighters world, same thing. They shifted that. I want to see all that. I want to read all that stuff. Gradually, over time, as writers are motivated to tell those stories. That will be the payoff for this, is if we get those kind of stories out of this. I want to see that. I think books like Prez are going to be an example of that. I think. We'll see when that stuff kicks off.
Hey, can you go to that that page that shows the two-page spread that shows all those different universes?
Okay.
Because one of the universes, I have a question on it. I'm still trying to figure out which actual universe it is. And I think I know, but I'm a little confused as to why they did some stuff with it.
Which one?
Okay, the upper left-hand corner. Mm-hmm. Because when you see, you see the shadowy images, I recognize a lot of those people. I know those people. But then when you see the updated versions of them, I don't completely understand why, like, Superman doesn't have the cape. Who is the Archer person?
That's not Superman. That's Superboy.
Okay, so that's Superboy dawning as being Superman.
That world, if you take a look at what every one of those characters in the background have in common, they are the successors of their respected hero. The Flash is not Barry. That's Wally West.
Okay.
The Superman is not Superman. It's Superboy. The Batman in the cloak is Damian. That's Kyle Rayner, who took over for Hal Jordan.
Okay.
So each of those, the Speedy is Arrowette. The Archer's Arrowette in the background. You see her in the red. She's behind
I got
Tempest.
Okay.
So this is the world where those characters have evolved. They've grown up, and they've become those characters.
They've become the heroes now.
Right.
Okay.
It's a world where, you know how you used to always talk about on the show how you wanted to see the progression in the age. That's the world of the progression. Like, I want a book of that. That's the stuff that we want. I want to read that. I do want to read that. But that's what that world is.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Good. Because I'm like, do I know? Because I recognize the characters. I'm like, but like, have I read that series? And at first I was thinking, is this, the Dini-verse? Because I saw female Martian Manhunter and all that. I'm like, is this the Dini-verse or is this? And I was trying to figure out what universe that was.
Well, that's Megan, who used to be on the Teen Titans.
Right.
So those are all the legacy, I guess you would say the former sidekicks, the world where they took over and they became the main heroes.
Okay. And the last one I had is you flip the page, the next one, the bottom left-hand corner. It looks like normal people. And I'm like, what world is that?
Earth, that's our Earth. That's the Earth where it's ours. And Ultra's the hero. You got to read Ultra's and Multiversity.
Okay. Alrighty. I got to read that then. That's okay.
Yeah, that's from
I haven't read that. I had no idea who that was. I'm like, that's our Earth, but our Earth doesn't have any people in a costume flying around. So, okay.
I thought it was interesting if you take a look at the Blue Beetle world, where it's those Charlton characters, that their Captain Atom kind of becomes more like a Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess that was like the original, that was the inspiration for Dr. Manhattan. So I'm glad, again, that was a... different universes out there. I'm like, man, that looks cool. That looks cool. And I want to read those, like the future, the night one, or future nights, or I'm not exactly sure what universe that is, but it's more of the mech version on that same page.
You know what I'm excited to see? Is you're talking about the that's the what do you call it? The Atomic Knights.
Okay, that's the new version of the Atomic Knights.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Because if you look in the background. That's like the Hercules and the Atomic Knights.
Gotcha.
So that'd be a modern version of them where it's basically, a Green Lantern version, a Martian Manhunter version.
Firestorm version, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Shifting to another character who's a superstar in this one, Dick Grayson. I'm a Batman fan, so anytime you bring in like Batman archetypes and stuff like that, I'm interested. I've really enjoyed this Dick Grayson's journey in this because you've taken a character who really was... a side story character in The World's End, where you got to see him with Barbara Gordon and his son. And Barbara died and got separated from his son and started to become intrigued by his story because his path was so different. This isn't a guy who had a relationship with Bruce Wayne. This isn't a guy, in Thomas Wayne, he really got close to Thomas Wayne during this because of circumstance. Now all of a sudden has to step up and become a Batman for a very different reason than he would previously. I like his journey. I like that there's certain qualities about certain characters where you can go, okay, he didn't, his situation didn't happen the way it did in our world, but at his core, this is Dick Grayson. And I'm excited to see his journey. What do you think? Did you see the new Batman costume, the one that he's going to be wearing in any of the previews?
No, I haven't seen that yet.
Okay. I saw it. It's unique. It's very different than some of the other takes on it. It's growing on me. At first, I looked at it, I was kind of like, don't know. Now I'm starting to like it. And when Earth 2 Society comes out, we'll have to talk about that issue because we'll really talk about his Batman costume and what that looks like. And I want to get your thoughts on it. It's really growing on me, but it's a different sort of take on it. And I mean, it's Batman. It's still a Batman costume. Don't get me wrong, but it's a different sort of take on it. And I'm glad actually because of the different journey. But the two superstars that have come out of this that are characters that I'm interested in society, I loved all of our normal characters that are in there. But the two that I'm really interested in, Yolanda Montez, and mainly because of this story, and Dick Grayson. I want to see where they go in this. So I can't wait to see, is she going to become Wildcat? What is that going to look like? I don't know. I want to see where her character goes in the continuation of that storyline. I'm
thinking 100% she's going to become Wildcat, and I agree with you on the two superstars of this team and of this, of Earth 2 book that I'm looking forward to. And it's funny, as you're talking, I'm just quietly nodding my head saying yes, 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 because, again, Dick Grayson was awesome in this. He is a character that throughout all the different universes, every time he was written, and he was like one of the cool guys in the room. And he's a character. It's funny, you think back to how he almost died, how many times throughout the universe, and there's the talks of killing him off and yada, yada, but this is a character that is obviously loved by creators because all these different creators, all the different tie-ins, all the different uses of him, Dick Grayson was the coolest guy in the room. Yep. And this same guy, no difference. Only thing is we got to see the evolution of him. He went from being a little bit of a whiny, little bit of a wimpy kind of, to the man who steps up and who will wear the mantle of the Bat, who will be worthy of the title of Batman. And you see him as a person, as a hero, as a father, everything just step up to a level that he needed to step up throughout all of this journey, throughout World's End, throughout Convergence, everything that happened. I was just excited for him and seeing him grow and seeing the character develop. And I was like, it's by the end here, I'm seeing it. I was so comfortable with him with the Bat on, and I'm like, yeah, he's becoming Batman. He's the Bat. And you see just the moments of him where he's able to kind of have the strategery, have the level of coolness that is, Batman, that is Dick Grayson, is Nightwing, is Robin, whatever title you're going to give him. This guy still has that level. And I'm most curious about him because he doesn't have the training of the Bat. So he only has these experiences. He's, scrambling. It's landing on his feet, improvise, adapt, overcome, which is a cool Dick Grayson characteristic that we've seen throughout the years. So I'm curious to see how he actually fits into the mantle, how he actually grows even further into being the Bat, being a hero.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I think there's a journey we can go on with him that I think has me really intrigued. I think Yolanda Montez has that same journey. And I want to clarify, I love the Earth 2 characters. I think James Robinson did a great job with launching that series and reimagining these characters in a way that is inviting. The reason why I'm more focused on those two, I think, because they're the fresh journey right now. We're going to get a chance to really, Yolanda Montez, we know little bits and pieces of her because of what happened with World's End and how that storyline wrapped up. But we haven't really got a chance to journey with her now. She's got a new status quo, and, she's going to have to find her way in the world. Dick Grayson, the same thing. I think they're going to be our kind of riding buddies, where we can kind of go along with them and be gradually brought into the Earth 2 Society world. And I'm excited for that. I'm really excited to go along with these players and see how this all plays out. I think it's going to be a really exciting time for those characters. This event, I've seen a lot of posts all over the internet with people who loved it, people who hated it, people who fell somewhere in the middle. But I've seen a lot of posts where people have said they read the first couple issues, couldn't get into it, and jumped off. And I would highly recommend, if you jumped off of it, to read. Don't worry about the tie-ins. And if you read the mini and you love it, you're going to want to read the tie-ins on your own. But just for the sake of really judging this story properly, at least finish the mini, because you don't need the tie-ins to finish the mini. There's not, and I actually quite like that. But the mini itself, it builds in a way that you can't really appreciate it one way or the other. You may hate it at the end, and if you do, I'd love to hear your commentary on it. And just because I'm intrigued by people who have different takes on stories than I do, but I don't think you can really judge the story until the end. I just feel like the way this story built, it was a very, you said it before, it was enjoyable early on, and I enjoyed the story all along, but there wasn't these big bam, ba-bam, ba-bam events, because there couldn't be. This story had to build the way that it did, and that was the part that really struck me on this. It isn't really until the end that you go, wow, okay, it was all worth it. A lot happened in this, yeah. But it was a gradual build to what happened in this.
Yeah, and it's funny because you talk about the tie-ins. I still haven't read all the tie-ins. Mm-hmm. I still have to get caught up on a lot of the week 8 tie-ins, but I always was able to keep up on the actual Convergence because and just keep everything going. And I never had a moment that I felt lost, confused, or even lost anything out of the enjoyment. Because when I went back to when I'd see some reference that obviously happened in a tie-in in the main series, and I read then the tie-in, I was like, oh, okay, now I know the rest of the story. It never felt like, oh, it spoiled something for me. It never had that feeling for me just going through, and I was always, again, it was something that did help me appreciate and enjoy these tie-ins and these stories even more. And I've said a couple times now, this series now has rereadability for me, and it's the ending that did make it. It is the ramifications of this. It is seeing these cool characters go on saying, okay, time to step up another level. And I'm looking forward to seeing him and his son get reunited. I'm looking forward to seeing, I'm hoping they keep that going and they keep that father-son relationship in the comic books, and actually seeing how his son deals with the fact that his dad is now Batman.
Hey, Jim?
Yeah.
Jim, are you by a window?
Yeah.
Okay, can you look at it real quick?
Okay.
Telos is watching you. I was looking at that. I'm like, that's a little creepy. Dude in the sky watching you all the time.
Actually, he also smacked me in the face when I used strategery as reference to Dick Grayson.
Yeah,
I didn't say anything at the time.
He said that's my friend.
You want to have a loud, ow!
That's my friend, yeah.
He laid it down on me.
That's funny. He's like, this is exactly why we didn't take your neighborhood.
Yeah, this was something that, again, a couple pages told the story and wrapped it up, and I really do dig this. And I love seeing the fact that, Alan's able to tie into this world. And he's able, because this Green Lantern always had that connection to the Earth, connection to the green. He still has that. He still has that power, and it's still... his groove, and he's able to pull the people in. And it was something we kind of thought was going to happen. I know when this first came out, we're like, I wonder if this is going to happen. And even wondering that, thinking that was going to happen, you still get that moment. And some of that was in Wildcat, with just the look on her face, it's beautiful, Alan, and just, it's home, isn't it? And you see just that joy in her, and you see them like, yeah. And I really dig the emotion that we were getting from that. And after everything these people had been through, they now have this positive thing. They have their people arriving. It was a good, happy ending for a comic.
Yeah. And it builds towards, like you said, where are we going from here, future storytelling. And that's the part that I'm really excited about with what's going to come next. I mean, for us, that opens up just some really cool storytelling that we're going to hopefully get out of this. I'm curious to see what creators do with it. That's ultimately the payoff. What do creators do now with this? And I can't wait to see what that looks like.
And, of course, little blinks into our universe as well. That was kind of interesting. The fact that Clark and that Superman and Supergirl were able to see that flash of green light, then went away when the planet disappeared. So again, I'm pretty sure we're going to get a tie-in between Earth 2 and our Earth, and we're going to get some type of interaction between the two of them. Maybe in the Dark Side War, maybe not. I don't know, because we still have that whole thing coming down, because we got Darkseid, who currently resides in the Earth 2 universe, planning his assault on this universe. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see if our Earth 2 heroes jump into the fray again with Darkseid, kind of like a payback, round 2 time.
I'll be curious to see how that happens, too. At the end, the thing I always liked about the multiverse was JSA, JLA crossovers, that kind of thing. We'll see where this winds up going with this one if we end up getting those type of things down the road.
We are Crystal Men from Mercury. We have no quarrel with you.
Hey, Sean and Jim, this is Adam Fideli. Just thought I'd call in. I'm getting really excited for the books that are post-Convergence, like Black Canary, Dr. Fate, Green Lantern, Lost Army, Martian Manhunter, Perez, Robinson, the Batman. All those books would be really fantastic. My question is, what are the books that you guys are most looking forward to? All right, guys, have a great show. Thanks.
Do you have certain books that you're most looking forward to, Jim?
Oh, no? God, yeah. And I love the fact that these tie-ins have been giving us some sneak peeks and some previews on some of this stuff. And, I think Grayson was another one that I was excited for, just, the continuation of the coolness that is Dick Grayson. I was very Grayson happy throughout Convergence, so we're getting more of that. I got to say, the Teen Titans one really just had me pumped, seeing, Tim having his unit, Cassie having hers, knowing that somewhere down the line we're going to get something going to happen between them, and just the protection of Connor, and eventually down the line there's going to be a fight between them. Eventually, everything's going to get out there, and we're going to see what happens. I loved seeing the different characters that are on Tim's team, the different characters that are on Cassie's team. So those were something I was looking forward to. The Hal Jordan, his Green Lantern books, and also the Lost as well, Lost Army. Just little sneak peeks as to who the surprise person that's on the Lost Army is, and just seeing Hal being Hal, but he's the man on run. He's the most wanted man in the universe, and you just seeing Hal react and interact, and how we haven't lost Hal Jordan. We've just got to have it. He's doing things a little bit differently now. So those were just a couple right off the top of my head. But there's a lot out there that I'm learning. This is going to be neat. This is going to be a cool run.
Yeah, I'm excited for all that too. You know what else? I'm interested in some of the books that are new and unique that are going to surprise me. I'm looking for my next Animal Man, if that makes sense. Omega Men is intriguing me. Dr. Fate is intriguing me. Prez is intriguing me. There's just different books that, like, I'm hoping Section 8, the miniseries. I was a big Hitman fan, so the idea that we're gonna have that team back together again is exciting me. Just the different experiments. I want to read stuff like Batmite and Bizarro and stuff like that too. Those are going to be fun though. The ones that I'm really looking forward to are the ones that Dr. Fate I think is probably an Omega Men. Those are probably the two that are standing out for me the most, that I'm most intrigued by. I want to be surprised. I want a book to kind of make me go, oh, I didn't really understand this concept the way that I do now, and man, am I into it. Because Animal Man, I reference that a lot. That was my one in the New 52 when that hit, and Swamp Thing. Those are the two books that in the New 52 just kind of made me rethink two concepts that I didn't really connect with on the same level that I do now, and got me excited. They're ones that made me really a fan of those characters. I was glad to see in Justice League United that we're going to continue getting Animal Man. Like, I was excited to see that because I like the character so much now. So those are things that have me intrigued. I want that book. I want that book that's like this is my character that I'm reading now that I never got before. And yet I'm really blown away by this take on the character. Omega Man, it's Tom King, and I'm really a big fan of Tom King's writing. Grayson, you referenced how great that book is. So I've got big hopes for that book as being something that I'm going to be really interested in. And Paul Levitt's doing Dr. Fate. World's Finest was so good that I really am just hoping for another home run from Paul Levitz with Dr. Fate, just because it's going to be a fresh take on that character. We're going to get kind of a new imagining of Dr. Fate. I love the concept of Dr. Fate. I want that to be good. I'm glad there's a Constantine book coming out of this, because I've become a big John Constantine fan. But I'd say, some of those new characters where I'm like, we haven't had a Dr. Fate book in a while. I want to see, really good Dr. Fate book. I really want to enjoy that. And it's something different. And I want something different in my library.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the Dr. Fate, because that was one when I really didn't want an ending of... I didn't want a new imagining of Dr. Fate, but as you said, with creative team, you got to trust what they've done. I've seen what he's done in the past. I know got some skills, so it's one of those things. Okay, let's see what we got going here. That's one I'm going to keep a close eye on. And the Omega Men, I'm glad you mentioned them as well. That was another one where I was like, I really don't know the Omega Men, but again, I know the creator. I trust the creator. If he's going to tell me a story, I'm going to trust that it's going to be good, because I know he's got the skills and he writes the way I like the story to be written. So those are two titles that are on my definite watch list right now.
I often hear the criticism a lot, like, why aren't more unique characters given a shot? And it's the only way that those characters succeed is if people give them a try. I'm not saying that you have to give them a try and then become a drone and follow it if it's not your cup of tea. Don't do that. But if any of these you're kind of looking at like, I'm interested, or if you like the creator or something like that, give the book a shot. And then if you don't like it, your prerogative, drop it. That's what you should do. But give the concept a chance. If you like it, tell people about it. Because a lot of these smaller, lesser-known characters and books, this is where we as fans have a lot of control and power. We often act like we're powerless. We're not. We can be the ones to hand out the olive branch to other people and say, hey, look, you should be checking out this book. And I'd like to see us, just as a fan community, rally behind some of our favorite titles, whether they're small characters or big characters. Get the word out that, like, hey, you should be reading this right now, and here's why. That's where, with social media nowadays, there isn't a person listening to this that doesn't have that kind of power. And we really can, by one tweet that everybody's got followers, whether you got 10 or 200 or 2,000 or more. It doesn't matter. When you tweet out that you're digging a book, one person goes and picks up that book, you've done something. You've added another reader to that title, potentially. By posting it on Facebook, by, telling somebody, word of mouth, you're still helping that book. You're giving that book a chance that maybe it didn't have before. So, and hopefully creating a new comic fan or bringing back a lapsed one. Do that with books that mean something to you. You know, you don't have to do it as a drone. I don't encourage that. I never do. I encourage sharing what you're passionate about and really getting out there. And if you're not passionate about anything you're reading right now, start jumping ship on some of those titles and find the ones that you are. Previous is too big a book to not have a book that you're passionate about right now. Hope everybody listening to this has got I've got this one title that, you'd have to pry it out of my cold dead hands. I mean, this is my one. If I had no money, I'd sell blood for this one. Yeah. That's what comics are all about. It's about that kind of irrational need to be able to follow certain characters and certain plots and things like that because it's just that good. So I hope everybody listening to this has that and start praising it. Get the word out. Get people reading it, whether it's the biggest character or the smallest, because of it. I want to see that come out of this. I want to see some surprising characters take off. Maybe it's Dr. Fate. Maybe it's Omega Men. Who knows? Maybe Perez. Perez all of a sudden, that book does gangbusters. I think it's a mini, if I remember correctly, and don't quote me 100% on that. I'm shooting that off the top of my head. But whatever it is, maybe that'll go gangbusters and be this cool thing, and there'll be more than one mini or something like that. I don't know. The previous Perez generated that kind of buzz, and I hope this one does. I don't know. I want that kind of stuff. I am always intrigued by that.
Just remember, I have the power!
DC does do a He-Man book.
I know.
Hey guys, it's D'Angelo from Detroit calling again, and maybe other people have made this, deduced this, but it seems to me like Marvel and DC have traveled back 30 years and switched places. DC, you've got Convergence, where we got basically an omnipotent being creating this brand new world of different little areas all brought together in one and basically ordering them to fight each other. Have I seen this before? Yes. The original Secret Wars, very similar. In Marvel, we've got all different alternate realities, all alternate universes dying and collapsing into basically one, what's going to be left is one universe. Have I seen this before? Yes, 30 years ago, a Crisis. I mean, it's crazy. It's like a mirror image of stuff that happened, and DC's kind of doing what Marvel did with Secret Wars, and Marvel's kind of doing what DC did with Crisis. It's just funny to me. But, yeah, loving the show, guys. Great Convergence talk. It's an interesting event. It's not my favorite just because I don't think, I like the tie-ins to kind of mean something to the story. Like, I don't know. Maybe I just don't have as much connection to some of the older stuff because I wasn't around reading it then, but it's pretty good. And hey, now the TV show's ended, how about you guys rank all the comic shows that you've seen this year, now that they're all ended? Here's my rundown. Number 1, Daredevil. Unbelievable. That's my opinion. Even counting, it's the best thing Marvel's done. Better than the Avengers movies, better than anything. Daredevil was absolutely amazing. Number 2, The Flash. Everything, as dark as Daredevil is, Flash is the lightness that makes superhero comics fantastic. Flash is, just fun. Everything is fun and great continuity between storylines. Great overarching plot. Flash was great. Number 3, I'm going to go Arrow. Continued to be strong. I thought it was a little bit of a step back from last year, but still really good. Enjoy the stuff with Raja Ghul, and yeah, it was good. 4, I'd say Gotham. I call Gotham like this is like a comic book show for the non-comic fan. My wife likes Gotham the best. My brother likes Gotham the best, just because it's kind of like a procedural, but it's easy to connect to, and there's not much backstory you need to know. We're at number 5. I'd say Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Pretty good. I like the Inhuman stuff they're doing, but I don't know. It still falls a little flat for me. Number 6, Agent Carter. It was decent, but I didn't love it. And number 7, I just never got into Constantine. I know you guys rant and rave about it, but I don't know. It just didn't click with me. But dear, what you guys thought. Yeah, keep doing what you're doing. Love the show, and keep listening. Bye.
Let's do TV shows first, as far as kind of ranking them, and then we'll because I think you and I probably have different watching experiences on some of these shows. So it'd be kind of fun to just kind of talk about that real quick, and then we can jump back to some of his other comments about, the DC and Marvel similarities or swapping places kind of thing that he was talking about. But as far as TV shows go, I have the toughest time picking my favorite show out of the batch, because it really, as a DC fan, I thought, the big ones, were the superhero-based ones like Gotham and Flash and Arrow, they tended to flip between week to week, which one was my favorite program. But I will say it was pretty neck and neck between Arrow and The Flash. There were some weeks where I was like, oh my gosh, it's so The Flash, but then Arrow would come back strong. I loved the Ra's al Ghul storyline. I know some people were saying that storyline took too long. To me, it was like one gripping twist and turn after another on that whole thing. And I've come to this conclusion when it comes to Flash and Arrow, because typically I struggled. I would watch mostly on Saturday mornings. And the reason why is during the week, a lot of times I'd come home from work and I would have work to do for my job, and I wasn't able to get to them until the weekend. But it was always I would get to them on Saturday mornings and watch them, and I really enjoyed that experience. What I really loved, though, about Flash and Arrow was the fact that Flash is that bright, fun, truly superheroic character. He's got that moral code. And Ollie's not the opposite, but he is that dark brooding. It's Superman and Batman, it's that kind of concept. In this case, it's the brave and the bold, with these two characters. It's that kind of thing going on. And I really love the way the shows complement each other. And it sounds cheap to say it's a tie between the two of them, but I really feel there aren't two shows on television right now that are doing that for me the way that these two are. There's a synergy between the two, and it's because it's a shared universe. There's a synergy between the two that I really love. By the way, I want to, the program, I kept saying it was Legends of the Superheroes, the ones that was coming up. It's actually Legends of Tomorrow. Is what it was. Somebody corrected me on there. They're so correct. The spin-off show that's coming. I'm going to be wondering how that's going to throw into the mix for me. I like the shared universe concept of it. And I do think it's one of the reasons why when I talk about the DC shows in particular, Arrow and Flash, because it's so organic and not forced the way that they share a universe, like they appear in each other's book issues when it makes sense. It's not, you don't have to have them in every week. You don't have to have references to them every week. But when they're there, they're so cool because they matter and they're well written. And there's actually a value to both programs when that happens. The comparisons they have to each other when they're talking about each other or when their supporting cast is talking about each other, I think is really amazing. I loved Diggle's reactions to Barry every time that he sees him and just that whole world. That stuff was great. But then Barry's, when Barry and Joe would talk about how, Barry, you can't become him. You aren't him. And when you do, you lose that part of yourself. It didn't diminish anything for Ollie for me. It just made Barry stand out more when they had those conversations. So that for those two, it's so cheap to say it, but those two are neck and neck because of their synergy and the way they're connected for me, because one's the light, one's the dark, and together that's like the perfect mix of stuff. After that, I cannot echo enough his comments on Daredevil. Daredevil's a close second to these two shows, and it's only because they work so well together and they're so well written that they edge out the majesty that was Daredevil. It was a Netflix show, and I thought it was going to be cool. I've always been a big Daredevil fan. As much as I'm a Batman junkie, that Frank Miller run on Daredevil, especially Born Again. I'm going to reference Born Again. I read Born Again when it came out, and that made me a Daredevil believer. And I've since read so much Daredevil storytelling with some great authors that have gone through. There was actually a great run that I don't always hear people reference from Carl Kessel that was a lot of fun with Daredevil. But I've enjoyed multiple years of reading Daredevil. He's a book that I constantly go back to. Even when my budget didn't call for it, I would often sell books to be able to read Daredevil. And the Daredevil TV series, if it's worth getting Netflix for anybody listening out there, you can do binge watching on it and then, dump your Netflix subscription if you're like, hey, I'm doing it on a budget. It is one of the best, tightest, most well-written shows out there for programming, and forget superhero programming in general. It's so worth watching. You need to watch that. That is my close second. Third would be Gotham. I thought Gotham was just really great this season. I loved that they would do multi-arc storylines. I really love the characters, and some people don't like Jim Gordon, I really like, and I've seen other people that have said he's too wooden or anything like that. I loved the fact that he is wooden. He's the good guy. He's the straight-laced fella. And you see him have to develop new relationships like with Leslie Tompkins because of the fact that he's your good guy. She has an attraction to him, and that relationship with Leslie, I think, has been really great throughout. I loved what happened with Barbara because I didn't see any of that coming. Really great show. That's a very close third. After that's where it gets tricky for me because I really think we've been very lucky with the quality of superhero programming. We've had Constantine, we've had iZombie, we have the great Marvel shows, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Agent Carter. I guess if I had to go into an order, I would go Constantine next. I really loved how close that was to the comic. The fact that Constantine is the true anti-hero in it, and I hope that show sees a life somewhere else. Followed closely by iZombie. Again, because if you start to see a pattern we've got great superhero shows in my first batch. These are ones they're a little unique take on the comic book world. I want to see more of this kind of stuff. You know what I'm leaving out of this whole mix that has to go up towards the top, and it's going to go right behind Daredevil? Oof. No, it's going to go above Daredevil. Walking Dead.
I was waiting for that.
I totally was, because he didn't mention it. I'm going to throw it in. I have to throw it in there because that is a comic book show. So I'm going to throw that up there. It would be Arrow and the Flash, followed by Walking Dead, then Daredevil. That would be the way that would work. I got to throw Walking Dead in there, so I apologize for that omission. So then shift everything down accordingly. So then it would go Constantine, iZombie. Ooh, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. would go next, and then Agent Carter. I liked both of those, though. I don't, I hate putting any of these shows at the bottom of the list because they were good. I really it's such a smorgasbord. And honestly, that list, I'll stick with that list and say that that's a fair list of all those shows. And I think I got everything in that mix. And if I didn't, somebody correct me. But going through that whole list of shows, I honestly thought they were all great. And some of those, from week to week, that list would change. But I would say at the end of this season right now, where we're at right now at this point, I'm very comfortable with that list right now. So if you ask me today, what is my list right now at the end of the seasons with where everybody's at, that would be my list right now, and I'm very comfortable saying that was where they were at. And I wouldn't drop a single one of those shows. I'm very worried about Constantine, the fact that it's been canceled and we haven't heard anything about somebody picking it up, because I think it was just a terrific show. So I will stick with that as my list. Where are you at? And what was your watching on any of that? I don't know how much of any of that you've seen.
Well, any of the Marvel titles, I did not watch this season.
Okay.
And it was partially because I watched so much different stuff that I was, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. got stockpiled, Agent Carter got stockpiled. I was just like, you know what? And I noticed my DVR was almost completely full. I'm like, time to clean house. And I went through the titles that I really wanted to keep and got rid of other titles, and I'm still playing catch up on a lot of titles out there that I'm not going to delete and get rid of. So all the Marvel stuff, I did not watch any of it, so none of those are going to be in my ranking. For me, I didn't have a tie for the top spot. I had a three-way dance.
Wow.
And I'm going to actually rank them, and I'm going to give it. But for me, it was my three-way dance throughout this entire year has been Walking Dead, Arrow, and Flash. Those three have always rotated in the top spot. Whichever episode I just watched went to the top spot. And and that's why I was laughing when you didn't mention, when you finally brought him in. Like, I was waiting for that. Come on, man. But, and it's tough because we got three dramatically different shows. Even though the two are connected, they're still dramatically different. I liked your analogy of the Superman-Batman comparison, the Brave and the Bold, and just how they are heroes and they have that. And that, for me, was always something I was always cheering and laughing about. But I gotta give my top spot to The Walking Dead, just because throughout the year, Walking Dead almost never got stockpiled. Never, I couldn't stay up late on Sunday to watch it because I had to work the next day, and plus when I watch that show at night, I get nightmares sometimes. So I didn't want to do that to myself. But I come home Monday from work, I go grab a bite to eat, sit down, and I watch Walking Dead. So, watching Walking Dead is my top spot just because, and I'm excited for Fear of the Walking Dead. There's the spin-off sequel, the spin-off prequel that's coming down the line soon. Looking forward to that, but that I think for me is my top spot. Then when I look at Arrow and Flash, that's a tough battle between the two of them. But it's, again, sticking with the Superman-Batman comparison. I am a Superman guy, and there's a reason I'm a Superman guy. I dig the grit. I dig that Ra's al Ghul story. That was awesome. I completely echo your sentiments on how cool that story was, but in the end, with me and a superhero story, I really do like the fact that the superhero is in the light and he's that bright, shining star. And this TV show is really, again, it's added to my enjoyment of who the Flash is and what kind of, Flash fact, what kind of person he is, what kind of hero. And this isn't exactly in the universe, but it does have those same type of jive, that same type of groove. And I'm definitely, so I'm putting Flash at my next spot, but it's just barely edging out, just like The Walking Dead just barely edged out the other two.
When we're done, I've got a choice between Arrow and Flash, and I'll do it at the end.
Oh, okay, cool.
Because I don't want to leave it a tie because I think that's unfair to the whole thing, and I actually, the more you're talking, the more it's making me realize I know which one edges out the other, and I'm going to say it at the end. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, well then next for me again, obviously as I said, is Arrow. There was just those great moments, and both the stories had these great moments, and these had these characters that you sit there and you're like, man, that is awesome. And it's, as I'm watching, I'm like, this is my favorite. But I'm thrilled and excited that those are all coming back, and I'm going to get more of it. Now, when I get to my number 4 spot, that's where things get tricky. And that's where it gets difficult for me because I've got the Constantine, iZombie, and Constantine, iZombie, and Gotham. Those three where I started looking at it because now that for me,
I want to know. You were saying like Miss. I'm like, what program are you watching? I'm not.
I'm like, what am I missing? Wait, hold on. But those three for me have been my second round of tied. So if technically in me of old, I would have a 1 and a 2. 1 would be the top 3, then 2 would be the next 3. Mm-hmm. That's how I would typically. That's actually how my true ranking is. I only have 2 in my list because I've got a top 3 and then a second 3. But so when I start looking at like iZombie, Constantine, and Gotham, once again, just the great story being told. Jim Gordon, the way he's portrayed, I'm loving young Bruce, and Alfred is absolutely outstanding. There's some character representations. I love the Penguin. The Penguin by far is probably one of my favorite characters in Gotham, and you can't, Selena Kyle, she's another. You have these young actors and actresses who are just doing some amazing work, and I'm like, so Gotham's got to take the 4th spot for me, just because of the quality of acting. There was probably some stuff that I was like, I wish they hadn't done that, but it never took away from the quality I was actually seeing. Just what the comparison and the comments that it's a comic story for people who aren't comic book readers is a really good, accurate, I think, a representation of what they're doing. They're not telling a comic book story. They're telling a story that takes place in the comic book universe. And I think that, for me, is a key to the strength of what Gotham is and why it's doing so well and why it, was pretty much immediately renewed and reviewed and repeated, and we're coming back with another season. So Gotham's got that solid 4th spot. Now, Constantine, iZombie. If you had asked me this question 2 weeks ago, I would have said Constantine, then iZombie. The difference between now and 2 weeks ago is I had a blitz of iZombie watching. I had some backlog of iZombies that I had to get caught up on, and I did get caught up. And I got to tell you, iZombie's taking Constantine now just because and it's not just it's fresh in my head. It's the fact that I really got to see the character growth. I really got to see them have a nice blend of comedic moments, but there is a darker twist to it, and there is a darker world to it. And you do kind of see the underbelly, and you see some of these characters that you go from hoorahing to, oh, no, don't do that. Don't kill him. Oh, and you just get those groans, and just that heart, breaks for this, this little zombie. You're like, oh, I feel bad for her. That's going to leave a mark. That's going to sting. And you get that connection. I think that connection is where I'm really growing with iZombie, and just, again, rant and rave. And putting Constantine last, it's not a bad show. It's a great show. I loved Constantine. He's the anti-hero. They really captured that. Constantine is a bit of a, SOB. And I like the fact that he is that in the TV show. That was one of the things I was worried about with Constantine, where they tried to make him too goody, because he's not a TV show. He's got to be that, that true hero. And no, they made him a bit of a jerk. They made him a bit of, they made him a Constantine. He does what he does sometimes.
They made him a Constantine. I like that.
Yep. He does what he does, and it's not always pleasant. So it's the bottom of the list, but it's not it's not a bad show. It's a really good, solid show, and I hope it has a home. I'd love to see it go over to CW or somewhere that actually sci-fi channel or something that embraces the supernatural and the creepy, and I think that would be a really good home for that show, and it could actually continue and flourish.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's a lot of channels that would be a good home for that, and I'd love to see it hit one of those. It'd be great. I'd love to see this. Honestly, I'd love to see the CW pick it up and just add it on to that. Maybe they make the whole channel superhero shows.
Yeah.
It's really, and honestly though, with some of the other shows like Vampire Diaries and stuff like that they've got on that channel, it would be a good fit. It really would be a good fit. So I would love to see it get picked up and put somewhere, just because it's good stuff. Did you see the Supergirl trailer?
No, I haven't yet.
Yeah, I'd be curious to get your take on it. I'm excited for that show. I keep hearing mixed reviews of it from people, and I guess the pilot's been leaked. And I'll admit, sometimes when those things happen, I've seen them. I have had no time this week to go and see them, but I've heard that's been another one where I've heard mixed reviews. I'm always cautious with a series, especially when it's a new one that kicks off. This happened with Flash. Remember how Flash, there were certain parts of Flash leaked and stuff like that, and people were kind of all over the place on it. I think with a lot of these shows, you got to have a few episodes under your belt before you really judge them, because Flash wound up being brilliant, and I want Supergirl to be brilliant. So I'm kind of deliberately going to stay away from it now and just wait for the show to be released and get excited for that and kind of enjoy the episodes, because I want to have the Flash experience with it. I really do. I want to just go in open-minded and enjoy the episode. I'm excited for it. The trailer looked cool. So, I just want it to be good. I want it to succeed. So I hope it's another one of those that comes out of the starting gate and surprises. I like the costume. I like the concept behind it. I just want to see it be good, and I hope it just winds up being a surprise and winds up shocking me with how interesting and exciting that it is. That's what I want it to be. I saw the trailer, though. The trailer got me excited, so that's what I can say about the trailer so far. I don't want to spoil too much of it, because you'll probably see the trailer at some point. And if you do, let's bring it up and chat about it. But that's where I'm at on Supergirl. I'm excited for that show.
If you want to pause, I'll watch the trailer right now and comment on it.
Well, then why don't we do that?
Hold on. Okay. Before we do that, we need your ranking. You said you were going to give us which one's the top. I'm curious to know. I want to know.
Yeah, you know what? That fell apart. And let me explain why. I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because I intended on going to it. I was going to choose Arrow, and I was going to say because of how good the Ra's al Ghul storyline was. But then, you know what I started thinking? I'm like, oh, that Flash finale, and how it left that cliffhanger, and what it did. I'm like, how can I do that? So I'm back to they're tied. I can't. They really are they're my yin and yang. I mean, they really are. Honestly, if I left it one of the two shows right now, I would actually be lying, because it's literally when I went to go do that, I was like thinking, wow, I grew up loving Ra's al Ghul. I loved the Batman storyline with that. I loved the struggle that Ra's al Ghul used to go out of his way to manipulate Batman to be his successor, and they did that so well in Arrow, and how well written it is. It has to be Arrow. Arrow edges it out. But then I thought about that finale with Flash, and how it built to that finale with Flash, and how we've got him basically going to try and stop a universe-shattering event that's going to happen there, and what he had to do with his mom. I mean, I don't know, we're going to be talking about the shows right now. I think it'll only just make me more solid in the fact that those two are the absolute best shows ever. So that will be our next segment that we do on this show will be on all those programs. So we'll talk about that when we get to it. But why don't we do what you suggested and watch the Supergirl trailer and come back and talk about it? Okay, I literally, your idea was really good because I was just going to let it go and just kind of not have a conversation about it. It's kind of appropriate to have a conversation about it. So what did you think?
Oh my God. Oh wow. I tell you, I'm excited for this one. Yeah. That looked cool. That looked really cool. I'm pumped for this. And it's, it's kind of I'm good. I'm in.
I think what people get turned off by, or at least from the comics I've heard, it's too Dawson's Creek or that type of thing. I think if you only watch the first half of the trailer, maybe. But then once you see all that's to frame that she hasn't become Supergirl yet. She hasn't embraced that role or had a chance to really learn all of her powers and what that means. And I like the journey. It's very similar to Smallville in the beginning. Clark was very awkward and he hadn't quite accepted his role. I like the idea of going on the journey with her. I also like that she's likable. We've seen takes of Supergirl where she's not. Yeah. And Supergirl should be more innocent and fun. And I like when she flies and goes out. I don't want to go back to hiding. Why would I want to do that? That sense of wonder of it, I thought was really cool. I think it's a good trailer. You have to watch the whole thing though, and there's a reason why that trailer's as long as it is. That wasn't a 2-minute trailer. That was over 6 minutes. That trailer, and it needed to be over 6 minutes because I think if you only watch isolated portions of it, the show doesn't work.
Right.
But when you see the whole thing, it's cool. Let's go to the one, Jimmy Olsen. I thought he was cool. I like the role of it. I don't care that he's black. I like the idea that he has more experience and that he's been around longer. He's been with Superman, so he's got something, to contribute as far as I don't want to say kind of like a mentor role because he gets it and he's been more tied into the whole thing. I like that. I like that he gave her the blanket and I like that the blanket thing matters more because we've seen her with shredded capes
yes.
as she and her boyfriend or friend or whatever you want to call him have kind of tried to put the costume together and make it work. I like the journey. I really do. I'm excited for it. I hope the show is as good as it looked in the trailer. The whole trailer. You got to watch the whole trailer because it doesn't work. If you just watch the first half, you're kind of scratching your head going, this is what they're doing? But then in the second half, you're like, oh, this is why they did that. That makes sense.
Yeah, and from the 6-minute trailer, it to me, it seems like Jimmy Olsen may know the secret in this universe.
Yes.
Because he's talking to her outside of, not in costume. He's talking to Kara. And that's when he presents her with the cape. So he knows she is Supergirl. So that could, and who knows, maybe he figures out throughout the process and maybe he doesn't know who she is because I'm assuming she's not going by the last name Kent. She's going by a different name. We don't know what name she's going by in this universe. But I'm assuming she's not a Kent here. So maybe he doesn't know Clark Kent is Superman, but James has a level of understanding of Superman. I like that. I really dig that. Seeing Olsen actually be more of not just the male version of the damsel in distress. I love that strong Jimmy Olsen. I love that kind of character. And again, you look at the guys who are the famous photographers, who are the famous photojournalists, they're not golly gee willikers anymore. That was back in the day when it was just you throw a kid a couple bucks and let them take a picture. Nowadays they're adult, they're professional, they're kind of extreme people because they put themselves in the line of fire for that shot. So I liked seeing a very confident, very strong, Jimmy Olsen. So again, with him I was happy, and I love the fact that they make reference that the cape actually has some functionality. It helps with the aerodynamics and with the cape shredding and just I was happy to see just that. And again, this is a 6-minute reference, so it's not a lot, but it's, they're going to go that route. And I'm a huge fan of the Lois and Clark Superman. Mm-hmm. So I like seeing these heroes outside of the costume. So
Yes.
seeing her as a regular person, I'm happy to see those stories. I'm happy if they go that route where it's not just about her in costume. I like the story of her surviving and her dealing with life and everything. Dawson's Creek, fine. I watched Dawson's Creek. I like Dawson's Creek. I'll watch this one.
Yeah, you got to have the right mix of superhero in there too. And in the superhero part, I actually quite liked when she was catching the plane. She didn't know if that would work or not, but you had to try. Because that was her family on there, and not just people that are innocent. You know, that her sister was on there, and she had to go and save her. I really like that. I think that's kind of neat, and I don't know. I want to give the show a chance. I want to see what it does. For a 6-minute trailer, it did that. If it had been a 3-minute trailer, I think I might have had a different opinion.
Oh, definitely would have had a definitely different opinion if it was shorter trailer. Because if you just take the beginning part of it, you know, you're like, okay, what are they doing with this? If you take the ending part, you're like, okay, yeah, there's some cool superhero stuff, but what's it gonna be? So you needed both sides of the story, and that's the thing that has me most excited, because we're seeing they're gonna explore both sides of the story. She's not just Supergirl, she's not just Kara. She is the full total package, and I like that.
Yeah, that stuff's really good, and I'm hoping that that's successful and does well as well. The sad part about that being on CBS is I don't think we're going to see any crossovers, and I would love to see it with that show because, I don't know, I just love seeing the TV universe. Stephen Amell always says that he believes the whole TV universe, including like things like Constantine and stuff like that, are part of the same shared universe, and I like his mentality.
Well, I like that as well, but I don't think that's the case, because in the trailer they mentioned Superman. And that's a character that's never been referenced or hinted at in Arrow or Flash. So it's, again, I wish CW became the superhero network and they had just this story was on there, because I'd love to see her interact with Flash and interact with Green Arrow. But yeah, I don't think we'll ever get any type of crossover like that. Now, I am, of course, curious. They're referencing Superman. Are we going to get a Superman appearance in this? I would love to see that.
We sort of did.
Well, yeah. A blurry or a picture, and we have it's the blanket that her cape is actually his cape. So yes, there is that. But I don't know. I still want, I part of me would like to have a dun 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 moment.
Have you seen any of the stuff for the Suicide Squad movie? You've been following that at all?
Yeah, I've seen some clips on that.
Did you see that Batman's going to be in it?
No, I haven't seen that one yet. Is it going to be
Batman
Affleck?
versus the Joker? Yes.
Oh, nice.
We're gonna see him in the Batmobile, and we're gonna see, it's probably gonna be a flashback sequence of him versus the Joker. Yeah. But I can't wait. I'm really excited for that. And we get to see more of. And I'd definitely, if I recommend looking it up online, because you get to see more of the Ben Affleck Batman costume, which is very. I mean, we knew it was Dark Knight Returns inspired. Yeah. It's incredibly Dark Knight Returns inspired.
Oh, nice.
And I can't wait for that.
Yeah, I like Ben Affleck. I like him as an actor. I felt bad when they casted him because people immediately start the Ben Affleck hating, and just like there's the immediate hate of the Joker, of Jared Leto's Joker. I'm like, we haven't actually seen it on the screen, guys. Don't hate it yet. When you actually see it, you don't like it, fine. That's your opinion. But don't go into the picture saying, "Oh, it's the worst thing ever," when you've never even seen it. And because I'm seeing clips, and I don't know. I don't see all the hatred. I don't understand that, and it's so I'm gonna track that one down as well, that clip as well, and see what I see on that. But I don't know. I'm digging this stuff. I'm thinking I'm very happy right now.
Speaking of Dark Knight Returns, there's something we didn't really mention on the show, and I don't know if you knew about this one. Dark Knight Returns had the sequel, Dark Knight Strikes Again, which we talked about. There is going to be an 8-issue second sequel called The Dark Knight 3, The Master Race.
Yeah.
Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I heard some clips on it.
It's co-written by Frank Miller and Brian Azzarello.
Ooh, I'm in.
It's funny how you put the two of them together, and that gets me really excited.
That's Superman kind of goes over the edge, right?
Which one?
In
Dark Knight 3?
Yeah.
I don't know what the premise is of it.
I thought that's what I read somewhere, that it's Superman basically says, hey, you know what? I think I'm done. I think it's a kind of Superman conquers the world. I thought I read that somewhere, and I don't remember where I read it. But it's kind of like it's going back to Batman versus Superman, and Superman's the villain this time, I think.
Okay. I'm fine with that. I want to, it's one of those things where It's funny. I'm strangely excited to see the final part of it. This is because it's supposed to be the end of the trilogy, is how that Frank Miller's looking at it. So I don't care what it's going to be. At first, if you told me that like a year ago, it's funny how you put Miller and Azzarello together, and that gets me completely interested in it. Those two names, Miller, Azzarello, I want to see the two of them together because I think that there's an interesting mesh of sensibilities there that I think will work really well the way that the two of them write. That I think that's going to be a really good story. I just do. I love Azzarello's work in general, and I just think he and Miller will like get along well. I think that I don't know, their sensibilities just seem to really mesh. So.
It's funny because when I heard about it, what I heard about it, I can't remember where I heard it, but I never heard Azzarello and Miller. I just heard Miller's coming out with the third one of it, and I thought they said Superman either conquers the world or tries to conquer the world, and so they're going. And it was just a quick blip about how they're going back to Superman versus Batman with Superman as the villain. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that probably could be pretty interesting. And I wasn't thinking anything too much of it, but you tell me that it's Miller and Azzarello, I'm like, okay, there we go, I'm in.
Right, yeah. So it's exciting. It's some good stuff going on right now.
Green Lantern, let you and I destroy that space junk.
Want to shout out our show website, ragingbullets.com. That's for news on what's going on with the podcast. We do regular updates on our episode status, what we're thinking about recording. It's a great way to find out what's going on with the show. It does go into our Twitter feed. We have a wonderful Facebook community, which I want to shout out and and really thank all the people that belong to it. I love checking it out because people post news articles, commentary about current issues that are going on. They'll post links to videos relating to DC television shows and comics in general. It's really just a great pop culture fan community, and I just want to shout them out. It's a wonderful community of people, and I'm just proud to be a part of it. We are on Google+, so basically where you want to find us, we are there. I have a PlayStation Network account. If you happen to be on any of the PlayStation family of consoles, feel free to add me. That's all available on our website, Raging Bullets. If you click on About Us, you can find out all that stuff and how to contact us and our personal pages and whatnot. We are also... have a show voicemail line, which we used on this episode, and I want to thank everyone who called. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. That's always available in every show note of every episode, so if you're ever looking for that, just go to our website. You can find it in every episode link, show notes. And we love having you part of the show, so anything that you have questions about, comments about, thoughts about, feel free to call in and get them on the podcast. Sponsoring this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Head over to DCBService.com this week to see the brand new deals that are coming for the month of June. You're going to want to be checking them out. They have amazing deals, 50% off or more, usually. Books are regularly 35% off plus. Statues and things and figures, you can get at amazing discounts as well that vary from manufacturer to manufacturer. It's a great way to get things, lock them in ahead of time. You always talk about the bundles, Jim. How, like especially for variant cover bundles, you get those amazing deals on those and get to lock those in right away. Do you think, Jim, if they didn't have them in bundles, do you think you would shop differently for variant covers? Or does that help when it's in a bundle format for you?
Oh, big time. Yeah, I think I definitely know I wouldn't be getting as many with the bundles. And, it's for me, because I would get just like the one title that's like my main title, or if they had an image of the variant cover, maybe I would get it based on that. But when I see that they got a nice bundle of things, one click, I go, let me just go with the whole thing. And I've been enjoying those collections, et cetera, that they're doing with that.
Because you and I have talked about it, it's one of the things I realize out of the two of us, you're really more of a variant collector than even I am. But your thing is, if I'm going to get them, I want them all or I don't want them.
Yeah. Well, they're
like your Pokemon.
It's the junkie mindset that I have. Uh-huh. I fully admit I have an addictive personality, and I kind of go that route. But there's some of the stuff that, like the special, especially the special stuff with Convergence, I got all those, and I like having the full package, on all the different variant Convergence titles and all that. And so then when they give us these the new releases, and they give us that, the Joker bundle, the Harley Quinn bundle, the Tiny Titans bundle, and I liked having the full collection of those. I thought that was kind of a neat having everything.
Well, and that makes sense, too, because it's fun that when you open it up, you can kind of go through and just enjoy looking at each one. And it's a series, so you can actually, it's almost like you got a separate book with just the covers in and of themselves, which I can see that being a definite draw from that. So that's DCBService.com. Over at InStockTrades.com, they always have deals of the week, and I jump to these first. They're always right up when you get to the website. They have Batgirl Trade Paperback Volume 5 Deadline. We're both big fans of the New 52 Batgirl. 50% off, only $8.99. That's a great way to jump onto that series at a discounted price. Batman Adventures. I can't shout this out enough. When we talk about all ages material, if you were a fan of Batman the Animated Series and you want more, you want new stories, Batman Adventures is chock full of those, and they're really well-written stories. This trade paperback volume 2 is 50% off, only $9.99. Giant Size X-Men 40th Anniversary. This is a story that's near and dear to my heart, which is why I'm shouting it out. 50% off for this 440-page volume. It's only $19.99. InStockTrades.com really does make it easy to get collected editions because you get them at a discount, which nowadays with the amount of books that are out there, if you want to stay caught up on anything, it's hard to do that on a budget. And InStockTrades.com and DCBService.com help you to do that. And I want to thank both of those sponsors for continuing to support our show. Our next episode, Mr. Seguin, which you and I are actually recording tomorrow, we're going to be talking about DC television. And we're going to talk about, it's going to be a shorter episode. We focus on, shorter, knowing us. I think I even said that out of there, because usually when I say it's a shorter episode, it winds up being a monster. We're going to be talking about The Flash, Arrow, and Gotham. And one of the reasons why we bumped that is we were taking a look at, and DC TV in general. One of the reasons why we decided to bump that to an episode tomorrow is we were realizing that, wow, we're really going to want to get in depth on these, and we don't want to shortchange that, so we're going to do them as a separate recording so we can really focus heavily on those programs and enjoy them. But I'm sure we're going to be talking about iZombie and Constantine as well, but also things that are coming up, like Preacher. And I want to talk about some of the Legends of Tomorrow and Supergirl. We'll talk more about that and our hopes for all of this programming in the coming year. So we'll do kind of a wrap up with that. So we will see everyone next week.
Bye!
On November 13th, Sean Whalen was asked to stop constantly talking about comic books. That request came from his wife. Deep down, he knew she was right, but he also knew that someday he would find someone that would talk to him. With nowhere else to go, he appeared at the home of his childhood friend Jim Segulin. Sometime earlier, Segulin's boss had requested that he shut up about his comic books and never speak of them again. Can two grown men put out a DC Comics podcast without driving each other crazy? It's Raging Bullets, the DC Comics fan podcast. With Sean Whalen as Dr. Norge, and Jim Segulin as the Sensei of the Whatnot and the Duke of You-Know. It's a spoiler podcast, so they will go in depth into the plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics they are reviewing. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you may better enjoy the show.